house and help her through this, that she would be forever grateful for that, which she is. And she's also come back to me to refer other clients, and she will move up to another house someday, right? So I knew it'd be worth it. And so that was the grind. Everybody was like, there's no way I'd show that many houses to a client. And I was like, well, you're not hungry enough.
My name is Kevin McIntosh, and this is The Closing Table, where we talk to experts about their experience in real estate all across the country. Let's go. And welcome back to The Closing Table. I am your host, Kevin C. McIntosh, and join us on this very special in-studio episode. We have the pleasure of speaking with Dave Lamarand. How you doing, Dave?
Good. How are you? Happy to be here.
Man, happy to have you in studio. It's always special when we have our guests actually in the house. Better content, better quality, better conversation.
Definitely. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. So we are here to talk business, real estate, more specifically in your market and via your experience. But before we do that, if you are familiar with The Closing Table, we like to start things off with an icebreaker. So for you, Dave, I have something called fill in the blank.
All right.
I have about 4 sentences here. They are incomplete. They have blanks there, and I need you to fill those in with some context that makes it make sense. You ready?
All right, let's do it.
All right. First one for you. The biggest risk in real estate is blank.
Oh, that's a business question or buyer question? That's a good buyer-owner question. The biggest risk in real estate. Oh, my God. I don't even know. That's a tough question. The biggest risk in real estate, I guess, if you're getting into real estate as a new agent, let's say, is to not have a plan, because it takes a while to get business started. So if you're a new agent, let's say for that, if you're a new agent, I wouldn't quit your job and jump right into real estate until you get the ball rolling.
I like that.
Because usually you're not going to make money right away.
I like that perspective. Okay, let's keep it moving. The most important thing to remember when selling a property is blank.
Pricing it properly, I believe, is the most important decision you can make.
Gotcha.
If you overprice it, it's going to sit. If you underprice it, people think something's wrong. So accurate, on point pricing is probably the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, especially in today's market, right?
Definitely.
When it comes to real estate, a good agent is blank.
Is a customer service representative that takes care of their clients' needs.
Yep.
That's really it.
Got you. Last one. The most important thing to look for when buying a property is
the last thing to look for. The first thing.
The most important thing
to look for. Sorry, I missed that.
No,
most important thing to look for when buying a property is, I guess, structure and foundation. If you're talking about the building itself.
Yeah.
And I always like to see houses or homes that are well cared for. Those are the things I look for. But it also depends on your threshold. If you like to do projects, you don't care about that.
Yeah.
You're willing to take on a project.
Yeah, there you go. We appreciate that. Well, thanks for loosening up to talk a little bit with our icebreaker, Dave. We appreciate it. So now I'd like to get into who you are. This segment is where you take 60 seconds or less and tell us, who is Dave outside of real estate?
Outside of real estate, father first and foremost, and then as far as hobbies, I'm a music enthusiast.
Okay.
Music, movies, TV shows, definitely music though, and a bit of a nerd.
Okay.
I nerd out on SpaceX and rocket stuff and and things like video and photo, the industry in general.
Nice. I feel like depending on the subject matter, we can all nerd out at certain things. I know I definitely can at certain things too. So there it is. That means that you're into that. So that's really what you do. That's pretty cool. So thank you. I like to take the time to separate the person from the profession. We're all human beings outside of what we do. So that says a lot. So let's get into it now. I want us to start off with you describing the market that you currently serve. First, geographically, and then give us any other additional economic detail with what's going on with real estate there.
Sure. Yeah. When I started this business, I'm big on branding because I used to have another business. So I started with that, and I came up with Metro Detroit Dave because it's easy. Like my last name's not easy for people to know how to pronounce or spell or anything.
Okay.
So let's make it short, sweet, and easy, and a kind of all-encompassing name. So Metro Detroit Dave is what I went with. So MetroDetroitDave.com. But that represents, I service the whole area, but I specialize in closer to, let's say, Westland, Canton, Livonia, kind of that area.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the market now, I mean, it's very similar to the market we've been dealing with for 4 years. I think most things that you're dealing with are going to be bidding wars. If you're looking for move-in ready updated homes, you're going to more than likely deal with a bidding war. The only time you're not going to deal with the bidding war, which is a couple of deals I might be dealing with soon, is when, like I mentioned earlier, the seller overprices the home. Whenever they overprice the home, it's usually the worst mistake they can make.
Right.
And I understand the logic. You think if I start high, we'll negotiate down and I'll get more than what it's worth. It's the wrong strategy in this market. In this market, you want to price it at value so people realize it's worth that. They'll show up. You'll get more people through the door. You'll more than likely get a bidding war, and it'll drive the price up.
Correct.
Well over your asking price. But I have 2 properties. As a matter of fact, right now I'm in the process of submitting offers, and both of them were overpriced. So we're hitting them both pretty far below the belt.
Yeah.
And in this market, that's crazy. Yeah. Like, there's no reason you have to do that. So, but that, to me, that kind of gives an all-encompassing picture of what the market is. We're still dealing with the bidding wars. The only 2 things that will stop a house from being in a bidding war will be being overpriced or something seriously wrong with it. And even seriously, if there's something seriously wrong with your house, again, if it's priced right,
you still get it off.
People will get it.
Right. Yeah. Good insight. I appreciate that because, I mean, it's the same songs, the same tune that we've been hearing from different guests, different agents in different markets also. It's only a few markets where you're not hearing, those niche markets, those small towns and rural areas where it may be a little bit different. But for the most part, people, we're seeing same thing, low inventory, a lot of offers being made and homes closing and selling very, very quick.
Yeah.
Appreciate that insight. So I want to see how you actually get your clients untraditionally, right? You have your methods of marketing, your social media, your billboards, or whatever the case may be. Can you describe a time where you got a client or a lead to a client in the most untraditional, unexpected way?
Yeah, I mean, I had to rack my brain on this one. I didn't have a lot of crazy stories, but I think the one that's probably not that uncommon was through a dating app. I had somebody that contacted me. We connected through a dating app, and then we then connected through, say, Facebook. But we didn't really talk much. We connected, but we didn't talk much.
Right.
Probably busy people. But and then one day she saw one of my video stories, and she was like, "Hey, I'm looking for a house." Right. Oh, perfect. But on the flip side of that, I also had, from one of my TikTok videos, I had somebody reach out to me because they had house questions and wanted to buy a house, but then ended up wanting to meet up for drinks another time for a date. So it was kind of like,
look at you, closing deals and closing deals.
Right. Closing all the deals.
Right. I love that. But that's good. I love to hear those stories. It involves technology. It involves social media in a way. But nonetheless, it's you just being you and still getting these clients, getting these leads to clients.
Yeah.
And what it really shows is you were still doing your job. You were still, putting information out there, and people kind of gravitated towards that, and they saw that, and you were able to show them your expertise from there. So kudos to you for that. I love to hear that, man. I love to hear that. Making the switch from being a successful photographer, running a photography business, now you're in real estate. I know it can be daunting. It's quite a transition. If you ask me, how did your background in photography influence your approach to real estate, and how do you incorporate your creative skills to helping clients find homes?
Yeah. When I was a photographer, and I guess a quick backstory on that was growing up, I grew up in a very blue collar environment around builders. I was in construction. I did I've always had an affinity for homes and houses, and home being an important thing for me.
Gotcha.
And so when I was a photographer and I was looking for homes, my realtor at one point said to me right before we bought our home, said, "Have you considered being a realtor? I think you'd be really good at it." And I had always thought about it, but I was kind of intimidated by it. So, but when I was a photographer, you're running a business, you're running a small business. And this is why in this industry, there's probably, it's about an 83% failure rate for new agents. That's because you're running a business and they don't realize that. They think you just go into work, you punch a clock, you get deals, and it doesn't happen like that. Nope. So neither did photography. When I started photography, I started off small and I worked my way up. And I knew that when I made this career change, I did it at 41 years old. And it's kind of scary for somebody, that far in their life to make a major career change. Yeah. So what I was able to do was leverage my skills from photography into this, which were basically like running CRMs, which you use in real estate, you use in most businesses.
Correct.
So having a CRM, knowing how to run a CRM, that was one of the main things. But then having a marketing background. And when I say a marketing background, I didn't go to school for it. I learned through experience, through my photography business, what gets people to interact, what gets people's interest. And being a visual person, obviously, as a photographer, that lent itself to, this is why, for example, shameless plug, window still was a first priority for me with listings because, one, I could take my own listing photos if I wanted to, but it's not what I specialized in.
Correct.
So, and you guys specialize in that, and I can appreciate that. And then, again, as a realtor, I want to spend my time on my business, not dealing with. And I think a lot of people make this mistake. They want to do all the things. They want to control all the things.
Correct.
And I think a really good business owner knows how to diversify and delegate to the professionals that specialize in their industry.
Yep.
So I definitely appreciate that. I appreciate that, what you guys do about it. And then I think the biggest things were business management, knowing how to run a business, knowing how to manage your finances and everything else. And then the grind.
I'm so glad you said that. Please continue. Yes.
Grind is huge, right? When I first started, and I give this example all the time when I teach classes to people on our team, is that I had a client that was approved. She was a single mother looking in Detroit, mostly Detroit. Mm-hmm. She was a single mother. She had a $60,000 budget, which is not a lot. Yeah. And she had 3 agents that dropped her prior to catching me. Wow. And I was willing to do what it took to sell a house in almost every case. And in this case, I got to admit, it got exhausting after a while. We'd go out and look at 10 houses a day. It was exhausting. But at some point, when you're at 30 houses, you come to this place where I'm like, okay, well, at this point, this is a lot of houses. But if I don't find her the house, 1, she doesn't get the house. 2, I never get paid for my time or my effort, right?
Yeah.
But then I also knew that if I was willing to stick it out and get her the house and help her through this, that she would be forever grateful for that, which she is. Mm-hmm. And she's also come back to me to refer other clients, and she will move up to another house someday, right? So I knew it'd be worth it. And so that was the grind. Everybody was like, there's no way I'd show that many houses to a client. And I was like, well, you're not hungry enough.
Ooh,
and I was hungry, man. I was like, I need to make money. Yeah. And so I was willing to do whatever it took. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And I had a lot of established and new agents that said, I would never show that many houses to somebody. And you can make the argument, that I should have done things to hone in her search to reduce the amount of houses we looked at. But the reality was she just wanted something. And this is Detroit, man. Some of these houses were bad. Mm-hmm. So it was like she just wanted something that she could move into that was a decent house. And here's the thing. We ended up getting a really great house that I think was way undervalued. Like, she got a good deal, put it that way.
Yeah. You'll find that in Detroit for sure.
And we actually ended up finding it in Redford.
Look at that.
So that
Still
worked
Detroit
out even better.
Area, Detroit adjacent. Yeah. Man, and I'm so glad you spoke on the grind, the hustle. That was one of the key things I was going to mention if you didn't. And I knew you would, because that drives entrepreneurship, business leadership. Like, you have to have that hustle, that drive, and things of that nature. But $60,000, can we talk about that? That's crazy. We're talking about the Detroit market, ladies and gentlemen. A very unique market, first and foremost. I don't want to get too far off, but I talk about it all the time. Yeah, the news will, or even just social media, people will just stir up rumors or misconceptions about the city and living and working there. And if you're from there, a lot of that is just, it's false.
Right. Well, yeah. False. I mean, there was definitely a day where that was true, but that was a long time ago.
Of course. You have to know how to move and
well, and I got to watch Detroit come back to life, and it was real exciting. I used to go down there back when it was like the only people that walked the streets in Detroit were bums. That was it. We knew their names. we knew where they hung out. This was real. Yeah. And then I always tell the story that one day I was down there. I was at the Majestic or Magic Stick actually.
Yep.
And I remember seeing this little hippie looking dude with a beanie and a latte walking down the street, and I was like, okay, Detroit's definitely coming back.
You see the hippie is like, it's all right now.
Yeah, glimmer of sunshine. First time it wasn't just a bum coming up to me. But yeah, no, Hilarious. It was great to watch that.
Love it. So since we already talked about the fact that you're serving the Metro Detroit area, we just talked about a story of a house selling for $60,000, which is crazy. Let's continue to talk about these crazy home stories. More importantly, or more specifically, a home with a historic story or some type of story attached to that home. Have you dealt with that, and what story? Please elaborate.
Yes, I did. So Detroit's North End my uncle, I had mentioned earlier, I grew up around blue collar construction. My uncle owned a construction company years ago, and two of my uncles bought houses in Detroit's North End to renovate, and they bought them for, I want to say, like $1,000. And it was half burnt down. Most people wouldn't even touch it. Of course. But he knew what the footprint was. He knew what the structure was, the location. A lot of people were saying the North End was kind of like the last spot for investors to move. So they were kind of ahead of that curve. So, but this house, as he was getting ready to list it with me, we had talked about it. He was telling me some of the stories because the original owners came back by. They grew up there. It was obviously dark times in Detroit. It was tough. And they had said that when they were children, they would look out their window and the house next door was a brothel. And they would basically just sit there and eat like lunch and breakfast, and they could see what was going on in the windows next door. And that was just how they grew up, right? And then apparently their parents had, I don't remember, it was a ridiculous amount of kids. And then the parents just pieced out. And all the kids just were stuck at the house, like fending for themselves, right? It was just a wild story. But eventually, somebody had burned down like the back half of it. So that's when my uncle bought it, obviously many, many years later, and renovated it. You should see this place. It was beautiful. It's on Alger Street. Amazing house, 3 stories. He salvaged as much of the original like cedar shake siding as he could, right. But he did everything, like from digging up the perimeter, putting in a whole drainage system around it, repouring the concrete to the basement. I mean, he did it right, Every wall was gutted down to the studs, all the electrical, HVAC. I mean, he did it right. Yeah, so beautiful house. The buyer got very lucky with that house, and was happy to sell it.
There you go, man. See, it takes someone who has that experience in repairing houses or fixing houses or doing some type of contracting work that can still see the vision on a home that may be marked as abandoned or blighted or whatever the case may be. But that goes to show another Detroit story, bringing a home from nothing into something completely beautiful, keeping its foundation and its base. I love to hear stuff like that. Building a successful team at the Modern Living Collective, that's your brokerage that you're at currently, seems to be based on collaboration more than competition. I like to hear stuff like that. Can you share a specific example of working collaboratively with your fellow agents for a positive outcome for a client?
Definitely. When I signed up, and it's with the EXP, so people know the spiel with the EXP. But the reason I decided to pull the trigger on becoming a realtor was because, first and foremost, I wanted the freedom. I wanted the freedom to run my business how I wanted to run it, right? Yeah. And so when I joined under the Lux Group, and what they had there was, it wasn't a team structure; it was more of a group, and it was really cool to watch because we would go to meetings and everybody was sharing ideas, and there was nobody thinking they were smarter or better or whatever than each other. It was really like, oh, that's a great idea. Let me share a great idea with you. And It was, everybody would do these at meetings, and it was a really cool collaborative environment to be a part of. So I was proud to be a part of that group, and I believe it's a big reason why I was able to find success early in my career. And then a few of the key players in that group, we had said, because they just wanted to have a group. And what we wanted was, there was a few things that we wanted to see out of the group that understandably they didn't really want to pursue. They were just like, hey, this is the structure we like. We get that, and we appreciated that. So we decided, the things that we would like to see, we want to bring those to a new group. And so Modern Living Collective is an EXP team, but it's also, you have the freedom. You have a group structure. So, for example, if you want to be a normal EXP agent but work underneath our banner, you can do that and do your own thing. And you just come to our meetings, you share with us, you help other agents, help each other, that whole collaboration environment. But then if you also want to have team leads, we have that option for you. So we have a lead system, and our agents can dip into those leads and close deals through them. So, but as far as examples, I'd say the sharing of knowledge and resources was the biggest thing. That was the biggest thing that I experienced at the Lux Group, and that's the biggest thing that we're bringing to the collective. And we just want to create a better experience for the clients, the buyers, the sellers, but also the agents. We want them to have freedom, but we also want them to have the tools at their disposal to be successful.
Got you. I like how you started off by basically separating the difference between a group and a team.
Yeah.
When you said that, based off your story too, I took the context. I initially was going to ask, what's the difference?
Yeah.
But you literally separated the two. The team is basically people working together. It can be a group, but it's a group of people working collaboratively, excuse me, and in sync.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a group just people there, just under the same roof, essentially.
Yeah, and it's an important distinction, especially with the Modern Living Collective, is that we are both. We are a group, primarily first and foremost. It's the family.
Yes.
But then you have the team structure so that you can still come in, do the leads, get the training. So if you're a new agent and you want to feel like you have that support, it's still there for you.
It is.
You know?
There it is. Beautiful to hear. Beautiful to hear. I want to talk about a situation that you may or may not have been in where you had to deal with legal issues, zoning issues with a specific property. I know that type of situation can get a little muddy and tricky. Have you had that? How did you get over that? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can say that I haven't had a lot of crazy issues like that so far. I did have with that Alger property in Detroit that I had explained. I did have one. They had bought the second parcel next to the property with the property, but it was one of those deals where the land bank was saying, if you buy this property, you can buy this piece of land next to it for $100.
Good deal. Yeah,
that's what they were doing for a while. So he had purchased it under that system. But what I didn't realize is how much of a difficult challenge it was going to be to deal with the Detroit Land Bank to get that sorted out on their end. From a legal perspective. And so what it ended up being was the title company that I worked with at the time, they're like, hey, we can't do anything with this. It's not in our wheelhouse. And I had to I'm calling all these different title companies. And it was basically came down to a title issue and was able to find a title company that was willing and able. And they were not only that, but they were used to dealing with those scenarios. So they were able to take care of it pretty quick. But it was something we didn't find out until like halfway through the deal, because when you submit your paperwork, title starts to do their business, and they called us up and they were like, hey, we can't do anything. I'm like, oh my God. So we had to hustle and find another title company, but we got it done.
I'm curious to know if you're able to share what was the issue that they couldn't do. Was there a lien on the
and to be honest, this was a couple years ago. I think it was just being able to get the title from the land bank. And it was more of a title technical question. So I don't even know what they had to do on their end. Okay. I just know that most title companies said they couldn't do it, and I had to find a title company that could. And that's the easiest way that I could explain it. And that's why we have the right people in the right place to do the jobs, right? So that's title's job. Yep. They handled it for us, thankfully.
and that's a story of resilience too, because I like that you're honest enough to say, I don't necessarily know specifically what the problem was, but I know I got the solution.
Right. We'll figure out a solution exactly. No matter what. Definitely.
I love that right there. I love that. Opening an office in Ann Arbor, creating your own brand. It's an exciting endeavor, obviously. Congratulations, too, on that.
Thank you.
What unique qualities do you aim to bring to the Ann Arbor real estate market? How do you see the Modern Living Collective standing out amongst other agencies?
Yeah, so we picked specifically Ann Arbor because there wasn't any EXP offices in the area, and we knew that there were because the thing about EXP is it gives people the freedom to work from home and to do things how they like to do them. And we know that a lot of people are attracted to this model, but this is the caveat that we deal with sometimes with EXP is that there are still people that like to go into the office. They still like to have the environment. So we wanted to bring them that option. And so bringing the office to Ann Arbor was a big move for us. Obviously, this was a new endeavor for me and the girls because it's 3 girls and myself.
Okay.
And it was a new endeavor for all of us, but it was an exciting project. So what we plan to bring that's different is we really just wanted to bring a comprehensive training for new agents and continued training for existing agents, obviously, but then also branding packages and the whole user experience for the buyer and seller. We wanted to kind of, rather than having EXP agents that are just doing, because here's the thing, like some people don't really have the aptitude for design and creative, and when it comes to coming up with buyers packs, sellers packs, so some stuff that people use out there isn't all that great. And what we wanted to do was say, hey, not to mention some people don't have the time or the patience for this kind of thing. So we want to design all these things for these agents so they can come on, jump under our umbrella. They got a cool brand that they're underneath. We have all the packs that you need. We have all the swag you need. And then we also have the training and the support system that you need.
Gotcha.
So that was the plan.
Yeah. And it seems like just to kind of push that forward into how that benefits the client, It obviously gives the agent all the resources, all the tools that they need to streamline the process, to get all the knowledge that they need to translate it for their clients also. So
yeah, and there was a
please.
There was this other little thing that I forgot I wanted to mention too, which was cool about the Lux group that I was in, and now with the Modern Living, is that we and other teams and businesses may use this as well, but we have ongoing group chats. We have Slack where we share a lot of our information, people access whenever they want. But then we also have group chats. And then if somebody's in this situation where they don't know what's going on, they drop their question in there, and you've got, 20, well, even just with Modern Living Collective is 20 agents, but in the full umbrella of Lux Group, probably 50 agents plus that of years and years of experience, that when we run into issues, they can drop it in there, and you can have so many experienced agents that have dealt with it come up with solutions and help you through your problems.
Exactly. Love that. Another story of collaboration within the group. We love to hear that. Buying and selling homes, there's a lot of emotions attached to it, right? Sometimes it's situations that people can't handle or don't have any control over, a death, a divorce, or some situation. So, like I said, there's a lot of emotions attached to homes, even just growing up in a home. Do you have any stories that you could share of maybe a seller or even a buyer, some client that had some type of deep connection with the home or property? And can you talk about how you kind of navigated them through either letting it go or whatever needed to be done?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, with this market, it's been really tough for everybody, for agents, for buyers especially. And my story is a buyer's story where they were somebody that we knew personally, and it's a big family. It's a family of 7 and 5 kids, and they were looking for, kind of loosely, for about 3 years before they met me. And then I was on a mission to help them find their home because I knew their situation. They were in a small rental. It's a big family. That's a lot to take on. And we had found, one property, and it came down to, this is what we deal with in this industry. If you're a new buyer, is we might try to forewarn you with, hey, this is what you're going to be up against. This is how I would advise you to make an offer. But some people don't believe that, or they think they might know a better way to do it, right? And you can try to tell them, but you're not going to really get through. And sometimes they just unfortunately have to learn the hard way. So this isn't the best story in that respect, but I advised them on the offer. They decided on a different offer. It didn't work out. They lost the house, and it was heartbreaking for them. And I tried to mentally prepare them for the fact that, I said, listen, I just want you to know this isn't the strongest offer, so I don't know that we have much of a shot based on my conversation with the agent. But obviously, I'm here to do what you want. So we submitted, and I wanted to kind of soften the blow because I had a feeling that was going to happen. And it did, and it didn't. I mean, they were still pretty upset about it, but they understood. And then when the next one came along, and we had a couple others, but when the one came along that we got, this is the heartwarming story. So, but the heartbreak had to happen, I think, for this to occur, right? Yeah. And believe it or not, I found this happen in most of my cases where when people experience heartbreak on a loss of an offer, usually when we end up getting the right one, it ends up being better than the one that they went to the first time. So it's almost serendipitous where how it tends to work out. And that's what I believe happened in this case. So we had another property. They wanted a neighborhood right by my house. They called me. They said, we see this house. We think it's perfect. Can you please reach out to them and see if we can see it before anybody else? Yeah. And I was like, well, I can try, but I didn't really think they'd let it fly because most agents wouldn't let it fly. Right. But I just called her up and I said, look, I have a family of 7. They've been looking for 3 years. And I said, and they just, we've gotten beat. We don't want, we don't want to lose this. We want an opportunity. Yeah. Any chance we can do this? She spoke with the seller. The seller turned out to be somebody that actually built the house in a newer neighborhood. And they were emotionally attached to the house and wanted to make sure that the right buyer was in the house. Now, you do see this from time to time, but in this crazy market, you don't see it as much as you might like.
Correct.
So it was a breath of fresh air that they were willing to show us the house. And not only were they willing to show us, they were willing to take an offer from us before even going onto the market because they wanted a big family in that house.
Look at that, man.
So it worked out perfectly, and yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that's like, I love to hear. So they went through the heartbreak, which is realistic.
Sure.
Realistic, especially in a competitive market. Yeah,
definitely.
And especially as first-time home buyers. You may not have all the leverage to make the best offer, or at least monetarily. There are other ways that you can incentivize your offer, correct?
Yes.
Or make it look a little sweeter.
Definitely.
But nonetheless, it's part of the process. I'm so glad you got to share that because as a first-time home buyer, you're probably going to experience that once or twice. Falling in love with a home that you think is perfect, being in line with submitting an offer only to find out your offer hasn't been chosen. So you work with a real estate agent who's very professional, who sets real expectations, and nonetheless take their advice because they know what they're doing. This is like the second or third story I've heard on the closing table where they're not taking the advice of the professional that they hired or that they called.
Yeah.
And as a result, you lose your home. So it's just something to know. I'm glad you got to share that, and I'm glad they got their home, and then you had a buyer and seller. A seller, more importantly, who wanted to seek that a buyer who needed this home got this home.
Exactly. So
That's
it's good for the whole
story.
neighborhood.
Man, that's a beautiful story. I love it. Just wanted to elaborate on that. Dave, thinking back on your career, or not even your career, let's talk about this. I don't know what your situation is as a homeowner, but let's just make an assumption you don't own a home in 2023. With the market the way it is today, and with the resources and knowledge that you know today, what approach would you take to owning a home in 2023?
Good question. I would say I have a bit of a scarcity mindset with this, and I do for more than one reason, and I believe it's because, and I tell this story often where to get people to understand what the market is like is before 2008, before the crash of 2008, we had an abundance of homes. We also had an abundance of easy credit to buyers. So it was just a free-for-all, right? But because of that, builders were building, and all this crazy was economic boom was happening, which was a bubble. What happened after that, though, is you had a fear. You had businesses that went out of business. You had a fear of building. So builders now, they won't build a whole neighborhood. They'll build a house at a time and make sure somebody's buying it before they build the next one. Wow. What this has done, and this has been like a decade of slow production for home building, right? So by the time I think 2019 rolled around, we started seeing a shortage. We started having to go over the market a little bit. And in my estimation, it took us about 10 years to get there. So what I tell people is I believe that we're looking at about 10 years, and that's just a guess, right?
Okay.
That an educated guess, that 10 years before we can get back into a position where this will normalize again, but let's say 5 years at minimum. But what I'm dealing with is during that 10 years, we also had population growth. So the way I see this is from an economic standpoint is that it's a supply and demand issue, of course. Right. We do not have nearly enough supply. The demand is increasing, and it's increasing faster than the supply can increase. And then you add COVID into that, and the fact that right now all the labor fields are having such a hard time getting laborers,
all true,
keeping laborers. So production is still slow. So my advice, and sorry I got off on a tangent there, advice is do what it takes to get the house. And I say that because I believe that buying a house, and the market can always change, and it always does. But I believe that it's going to be a hard time to get a house for a while. But the sooner you get in, the sooner you start paying down the equity, the sooner you're going to be in a better position than if you wait. And they say time in the market is better than trying to time the market, right? And I think that's the best line you can really tell anybody is the longer you're in there, the better position you're going to be in than trying to time it.
Yep. And I understand, man, that's so deep because I understand that it gives you more experience. It gives you more knowledge on how to move, on how other people are doing offers and things like that. So that was very deep. As someone who's an aspiring homeowner, I'm in the process of getting things together myself. I feel the crunch of time, and especially with the conversations that we've had on the closing table, I feel the importance of getting in the home now.
Yeah.
Now.
Right.
I also liked your insight into thinking of how long or when it'll possibly take for the market to flip. I don't think I've had too many agents necessarily speak on that end. They'll speak on the current market, but they won't speak on when they make some type of assumption as to when it'll possibly turn around.
Well, I mean, because nobody has a crystal ball, right?
Of course,
so we don't want to know. I can't say it with any amount of certainty, but based on the past with the
trends,
economics, that's what I believe.
Correct. And I completely understand that. So I love the knowledge that you share with that. That question I find more valuable because our audience who are current homeowners or seeking to purchase their first home, they can take that perspective from a professional, from someone who already is in the business, and they can see that as something that's very valuable, and they can take that from there. So I appreciate you coming into the studio, Dave.
Appreciate you having me.
Always a special episode when we have our guests in. At this point, Dave, if you have any last words and or want to tell people how to reach out to you, please do so now.
Hey, yeah, I would just say reach out through metrodetroitdave.com or themodernlivingco.com. And, if you're an agent and you're interested in trying something new and you like this concept of freedom and collaboration, then we may be the team for you. So reach out, or group, I should say.
Perfect. Thank you again. Well said, well played. And for our YouTube audience watching right now, if you've gotten to this point in the episode, please do us both a favor and hit the like button. Make sure you also share the content and subscribe to our channel. And if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, or any other podcast platforms, please do the same. Give us a like, a 5-star rating, and subscribe to our channel. And Dave, we always like to leave the chat with a question before they leave. Get the brains thinking. So this is for you, chat. Is there a unique story behind the history of your home? If so, what is it? Don't tell us now. Leave it in the comments below. Besides that, I'll talk to you next time.